puppy. Pretty girl. For any of you who didn't know, I have a new dog. Her name is Brenda. She is a pit bull rescue from our local humane society. Um, she's very sweet. She's a very cuddly puppy, so she likes to be cuddled and petted and everything. Um, and she's very good so far. She's a little clingy, but I'm not surprised by that. She's still getting used to us, and we're getting used to her and everything. So for anyone who didn't see the announcement, yes, new dog. See if I can get you a better look at her. There we go. There's the puppy. Time for chapter 1091. Slight fun bit. The other day I was taking in a bunch of my Legos to sell to a place here in town that we have that's called Toys from the Past, where they buy old toys, and I think they also have some new stuff. I traded in the Legos and got like $150 something in store credit, and I got some figurines in the process afterwards. I got like an Ahsoka one and a Rey one for Star Wars, and I got some figurines from Ruby, RWBY. I got one of each of the girls for Ruby, Weiss, Blake, and Yang. So that was my fun thing recently. But while I was there, one of them mentioned that he's watching One Piece, and I'm like, so how far are you in it? And he's like, oh, not very far. I think he said he was like on season 2 or something. I'm like, oh, you got a ways to go, dude. But good luck and have fun. Luffy turns into a god. He didn't understand that. Not that I'm surprised. So actually into the chapter itself. So I actually really like the cover page. I love it when Oda does like just the Straw Hats having fun on the cover pages for the color page spread. So we just have all of the Straw Hats together, although we don't see Robin or Frankie. Not sure why, but we don't see Robin or Frankie. But all the rest of them are there, and they're all just like gorging themselves on pizza, which, first of all, we have like Jinbei and Sanji in the background cooking the pizzas together, so that's kind of nice there, since a lot of people think that Jinbei and Sanji don't necessarily see eye to eye. You know, it's like Zoro and Sanji. It's like they can get along when necessary. Not very often, but they can get along. And then we see Luffy, Usopp, Zoro, and Nami just like chowing down on this giant freaking pizza that looks delicious. And then Robin, and then Chopper and Brooke are over on the other, over in the background, just drinking tea and eating pizza as well. And then there's like 2 very dapper looking flamingos there as well, that are gorging themselves on the pizza. And a tiny little mouse in a chef's hat with a pizza cutter that was probably the one that cut up the pizza. I saw this and I'm like, I really want pizza now. So maybe I'll end up having pizza later this week. But I love these color page spreads where it's just like all the Straw Hats just like eating together and just having fun and everything. There's other ones where it's like them having a picnic, and other ones where it's like them eating ice cream and everything like that. But I like it when Oda draws them. It's just like, I want to know what little adventure they had where they all just had pizza that was cooked for them and cut up by a mouse. I want to know that adventure. But moving into the actual adventure that's happening now, we, of course, return to Egghead Island, or just outside of Egghead Island, where we see all the different Navy ships. As I said, this is chapter 1091, Sentomaru. So, yeah, this is going to be about Sentomaru. We're going to get a bit of a backstory for Sentomaru in this. Not that we didn't get that in one of the SBS recently. Well, we see all the Navy ships there, and they're, of course, being attacked by the Sea Beasts and by the Pacifista Mark IIIs and everything. And they're just, all the admirals, Kizaru has made his way onto the island to begin his incursion. And then we see a bunch of the other, the different vice admirals that are there. So, like, Dahl and probably Doberman, and, like, we see the one that has all of these chins is there, too. And they're all just like attacking the sea beasts and trying to, prevent damage from being done to the ships and everything. So we're getting that stuff. We're seeing all of those types of things. Doll looks amazing. I love Doll. I was like, she hasn't been around very long. I love her. Okay, fair enough. So we see them all attacking there, and then we also see within the lavosphere, we have Usopp is watching them via the Den Mushi that they got up and running again, and he's like, okay, so they've begun to attack the Robo Beasts, and the pacifistas on the coast. He's just like, informing the rest of the Straw Hats of what's going on. And Vegapunk's like, yeah, I was kind of hoping they would wait a little bit longer, but Sentomaru's there, and he's just like, it should be clear that the island's defenses are are nigh impenetrable, which, didn't take the laser guy into account there, unfortunately, Vegapunk, and that's going to kind of be the downfall at the moment. So we got that. We also find out that the pacifistas have that the Pacifista Mark IIIs, probably applies to the regular pacifistas as well, have a similar command structure to what the Seraphim have, where it starts off with like the authority chip at the bottom, and then Sentomaru, and then Vegapunk and the satellites, and then the 5 elders at the top of the command structure. So they have a similar one to what the Seraphim have, which makes sense. I mean, it's not like you can't just, send the pacifista out and expect them to just obey whoever. They have to obey whoever has the command chip. Or the authority chip, depending on how you want to translate that. But we'll see kind of how that kind of plays out in a minute. And it's also Vegapunk, you might need to rethink some of your command structures inside of things, particularly with the Seraphim soon, considering they're going to possibly be in control of the world. The world government's going to be in control of them soon. And they're just like, oh no, Kizaru is here already. And we see Nami, Usopp, and Brook are all just like watching the screen as well. And they're just like, so they sent that guy ahead to take out, to take out the deterrent. Yeah, and Nami's like, isn't that Kizaru? Oh no, Stussy was right. They did send an admiral. So obviously the first 9 Straw Hats all know who Kizaru is. I mean, Jinbei knows who Kizaru is as well. He's a warlord, and he's been a pirate for a long time, so he definitely knows who Kizaru is. But, all the Straw Hats are probably also just having, like, a slight bit of, like, PTSD going on right now, given what happened at Sabaody a little over 2 years ago at this point in time, with Kizaru kind of being the reason they all got separated. So they're probably having a slight bit of flashback there. Yeah, when they get to this in the anime, they'll probably redo some of the animation of showing, all the Straw Hats, Kizaru showing up and fighting against Zoro and Frankie and the others and everything, and, all of that stuff, fighting against Rayleigh, and it's just like, they don't have Rayleigh there to protect them this time, but they got other stuff to deal with right now. They've got other people that can deal with that right now. And they're just like, oh no, they've already started the fighting down there. And Brook's even like, oh no, these dark memories from Sabaody have come back to haunt us. Yeah. And then we also see Vegapunk, and he's just like, oh, I'm sorry, Sentomaru, for asking you to face him. It's too cruel. I'll understand if you choose to flee. So we already know from previous chapters that Kizaru and Sentomaru already have a relationship with each other, as in like they have a bond already, and we're going to get some flashbacks of that in a moment. Long confusion of the fact that, Sentomaru calls Kizaru uncle, but it's meant like uncle in like the Yakuza terms. It's just like this older, adult guy, adult male that, I kind of look up to and everything, and, that type of a respect set up there. And we know that Vegapunk and them have this, backstory as well, because of course Kizaru's lasers were used to help design not just the lasers that the pacifistas have, and that, the CBs probably have at this point in time as well, and that the Seraphim have, but also was used to design probably the laser grid, as we'll find out. That is what the barrier that protects the Labosphere. So, there's a lot of connections there, and, Kizaru would have spent a fair amount of time on Egghead Island while Vegapunk was, constructing it and everything and testing things. And all of that stuff. And of course, Sentomaru was there, because of course Sentomaru is Vegapunk's bodyguard. And then we cut down to where we have Kizaru and Sentomaru fighting. So Kizaru, he's activated one of his, light legs or whatever, and he's attacked and everything. And he's just like, he doesn't necessarily want to actually fight against Sentomaru because they have a bond. And he even stated in the previous chapter, to one of the Gorosei, to, Jay Garcia, that he's like, I really don't want to fight him, but he will, because that's his job at the moment. Although, dude, have a conscience. and kind of think things through a little bit more. Think for yourself, man. Think for yourself. Um, and so he's attacking Sentomaru, and he causes probably a bit of damage. He does knock him away, and then he uses his uh, Yasakino no Magatama, which is just one of his, light base attacks and everything like that. Imperial treasures of Japan and everything like that is what it's based off of. And Sentomaru is running away from the attack, but he's still like, he's just like avoiding the attack and everything. He's just like, I'm sorry, Unc, I gave Straw Hat my word. Which is, of course, so much, there's so much irony in that, considering the fact that Sentomaru was a part of the cause that the Straw Hats got separated. And then also 2 years later at Sabaody, when the Straw Hats were reuniting, he was there with the pacifistas trying to get them as well. So he's been a part of that. He was at Marineford as well, if I remember correctly, and all of that stuff. So it's just like, so we've seen a bunch of that stuff with Sentomaru and his other interactions with Luffy. Not always the best, but given the moment, and we're going to get the explanation in a second, Sentomaru is still fighting. He's still got his giant battle axe that he's using, and he's trying to still fight against Kizaru. And Kizaru's like, and since when have you been one to get chummy with pirates? Which is just like, hey, you're the one. Yeah, the government kind of started it. They had the warlord system for a long time. Well, 20-ish years, give or take. And Sentomaru is just like, I owe the old man my life. I don't care whose side I gotta take if it helps him escape. So this is going back to like the backstory that we got for Sentomaru, which we'll get in a moment in the chapter where it actually gets drawn. Which does not bode well for Sentomaru surviving this arc, unfortunately. But, Kizaru or Sentomaru and Vegapunk have this very good bond. It's like Vegapunk is kind of like his grandpa. He took him in, he's raised him, he gave, Sentomaru a job so he could have money to buy onigiri and everything, all of that stuff. And, so Sentomaru's loyalty lies with Vegapunk. And this is very much a good example of the fact that, where your loyalties lie may sometimes, not exactly coincide with, what is necessarily right or wrong from the world's perspective. From, of course, the world's perspective, the Marines are the good guys, and technically it kind of looks like they're trying to save Vegapunk from Luffy. And if they can swing it the right way and have Morgan swing the story the right way, they can make it look like, yeah, Luffy held Vegapunk hostage, and then, he ended up, taking Vegapunk he's the one that killed Vegapunk is probably what they're going to try to spin it as. Straw Hat Luffy is the one that killed Vegapunk in his satellites, and only York managed to survive. And was barely able to make it out alive and everything thanks to the help of the Marines, and all of that is probably what the world government will try to get Morgans to spin it as. Admittedly, considering that sounds like a good story, Morgans will probably do that thing, depending on how everything turns out, unless it's like, oh, Vegapunk turns on the world government is like a bigger headline in his opinions, depending on stuff. It all depends on what type of information Morgans gets his hands on in the next couple of chapters, or by the end of the arc. So, again, Sentomaru is like, Vegapunk has done nothing but help take care of me and give me a place to, give me a home and give me a job and everything, and he's raised me and all of this stuff, and he's done nothing but good and helpful to me, and if that means I have to go against the Marines and you, Uncle Kizaru, in order to protect him, and if that means I have to side with Straw Hat Luffy in order to do so, then so be it. And so we see them fighting, and Sentomaru uses, his axe, probably coated with Ryuo at that point in time, and like slices through Kizaru, and Kizaru just, light pulls himself apart and everything, so he's fine. And then we start getting into this little flashback where we see, it's supposed to be the backstory that we got for, hi pretty girl, it's supposed to be the backstory that we got for, are you trying to look out the window? Are you trying to look out the window? Or that. And what ends up happening is that, we get the flashback and it shows Sentomaru as a little tiny kid. He's adorable and he beat up a bunch of bears. Um, and we see that Kizaru and Vegapunk are the two that were sent to inspect what was going on here with the bears and, try to help the village. Again, we don't know exactly how long this is ago, probably at least 22 years ago if Vegapunk is working with someone who is a Marine at this point in time. Because, I don't remember if we have the exact time frame when Kizaru joined the Marines. I think we do. Because I think he joined around the same time that Kuzan and Sakazuki joined as well. So we have them. So this is probably way before he was, Kizaru. This is when he was still Borsellino, probably, or when he was going by that name. And we see them come across this kid in the mountains who beat up a bunch of bears. And they're just like, oh, well, what are we supposed to do? We were supposed to take care of the bears. Now what are we supposed to do? And they're just like, and Sentomaru is just like, all the villagers are all wimps and I hate them. I don't want to go back. And they're just like, and Kizaru's like, they kicked you out, huh? And he's like, all I need is a job that pays good. I'm tough and I don't get hungry or anything. And Vegapunk's like, oh, well then, can I ask what you're looking to buy with all that money? And Sentomaru's just like, onigiri, which is of course rice balls. Him and Rika from Shellstown would get along great. And Kizaru's just kind of laughing at that and everything, and they're just like, okay, yeah, sure, you can come with us, sure, And Kizaru's just like, you were so cute back then, like popping out of the memory. It's like, you were so cute back then. Admittedly, yes, Sentomaru very cute. And Vegapunk is offering Sentomaru, well, in that case, how about you, become my bodyguard and everything, and and that'll, you can come and work for me and protect me. And Sentomaru was like, yay, thank you. just adorable. And there's a lot of connections here with Sentomaru and Momotaro, and then it's like King Taro or something like that, parts of Japanese mythology that I'm not super familiar with. But he's a reference to that with his design and everything. And then we have this other little flashback where it's just like Sentomaru going over to Kizaru and calling him uncle, and he's just like, hey, can you train me to protect Grandpa Punk? I gotta become really, really strong. And Kizaru is just like, don't call me that. I'm not old, basically. And, and Kizaru, cutting back to the present, he's just like, I taught you the best I could, Sentomaru. And we see Sentomaru is using Ashigara Palm, which, according to the translations notes, is it's a sumo strike, and it is the mountain associated with the legend of King Taro, who of course inspires Sentomaru's design and everything. So Sentomaru is attacking Kizaru and probably cause a bit of damage. Sentomaru is canonically known to be able to use Ryuo and everything like that, so we know about that. But we also know that Sentomaru is also said to have the strongest defense in the world. And if you spent a good chunk of your life training against an admiral in the Marines, or someone who would become an admiral in the Marines, specifically a Logia, yeah, you probably got a fair amount of good defense there. But Kizaru is nothing to slouch at, as we of course saw way back in Sabaody, and even again more recently we saw him in film Red and stuff like that and such. And Kizaru is just like, my guard isn't anything to sneeze at either, and then he just does this huge laser blast right at Sentomaru, and that just causes this huge explosion, and we see Sentomaru go down, and he's all scorched and everything. We don't know the extent of his injuries. Sentomaru, as I said before, none of us are really going to be surprised if Sentomaru ends up dying during this arc. He just got a whole chapter named after him, and we got his backstory and everything. So if he ends up dying, we're not going to be surprised by that. But if he ends up surviving but being very badly injured, that's also not going to be a surprise. But if he does survive, and if the Marines happen to be able to take the island after Luffy and the others escape with Vegapunk, if that ends up happening, then Sentomaru will probably end up getting captured and either executed for betraying the Marines or sent to Impel Down. which sending a former Marine to impel down is probably not going to be the wisest decision in the world for him. It's like sending a cop to prison, although admittedly Sentomaru is technically a very good one and seems to be rather lawful in his regards to things. And then we see Kizaru pulls out an authority chip. And now whether or not he had this on him to begin with, or it was something he picked up, probably had it on to begin with. And we see him going, all pacifista units come in. The previous command issuer is unconscious and out of commission. Authority has been transferred to me. And we see the pacifistas are like listening in on this, and he's just like, there's been a change of plans. Protect the naval fleet and send the weaponized sea beast to the ocean floor. So this is where, this means that, Kizaru now has control over the pacifistas because he has the authority chip, and Sentomaru is out of commission at the moment, which is unfortunately true. And, we see that the pacifistas start attacking the sea beast, unfortunately. So poor sea beasts. And they're just going to get probably wiped out and slaughtered pretty quickly and sent to the sea floor, as they said. And, so they have the pacifista squadron under their control. And the dog left. They have the pacifista squadron under their control, which is being said over the loudspeaker, and probably also to inform Jay Garcia about what's going on. And we see Jay Garcia sitting there, probably just like listening in on what's going on, and probably not watching unless they have like a snail up on deck that's like filming stuff and showing it to him in his nice lavish room where he's slightly more safe. And so we see him, what a waste. But I suppose if I had to choose, the pacifista are the better asset to secure. Keep me updated on all the casualties incurred. It's like, okay, now he's showing concern for casualties, or at the very least appears to be showing concern for the casualties. He didn't seem all that concerned for the archaeologists several chapters ago who were trying to escape the island, who probably don't know anything about the Void Century, and stuff. So we already know that Gorosei are all very callous men. Whatever Eames' objective is what they want. So we get back to inside the labosphere, where we see, Usopp is still paying attention to what's going on. He's shouting out that Sentomaru is finished, so he can, we see Sentomaru's very scorched body, unfortunately. And Vegapunk is crying and very worried about this and everything, and he's just like, we can't dilly-dally. Let's lift the defense system and everything. So we see him and Atlas and Edison are still trying to hack their way through the password system that York had set up. And it's just, we have to get this done before he gets up here and everything. We don't have any time to waste and everything. So we see them all working. And then we see York just laughing in the background, and she's just like, you won't crack it. Don't forget, I'm a Vegapunk too, which is true. I mean, York does technically have all of the intelligence of the Vegapunks, but she's bad, so we don't want her to succeed. So we'll see how that goes. And then we see Kizaru, who is just like, okay, he's ready to head upstairs. Hi, pretty girl. Did you come back upstairs? And so then we see Vegapunk is, of course, talking again, and he's just like, focus, Kizaru is made of light, and he could be passing through the laser barrier any minute now. And then we see Usopp freaking out. He's just like, wait, so he can get here anyway, regardless of the fact that it's a laser barrier? And it's like, well, he is a laser person, so yeah, probably. Oh, no, that's not good. Oh, she found a toy. Did you find a toy you hid behind the bed? Did you find a toy you hid behind the bed? There. Here's your toy. Pretty girl. And so we're seeing all of that and everything. So it's just like, okay, well, and we're still getting we were almost wiped out back in the day by him. This is not good. And Kizaru is just, he's heading up, and he's just like, the Straw Hats. This is very nostalgic. So he's heading up. And then we see, we cut back to within the lavosphere again, and it's outside of where the Vegapunk's lab is, where we have Vegaforce 1 is carrying, the Sunny and trying to get it to the other side so that way they can, head out in the correct area. And it's just like, let's book it. Once the barrier is down, we need to be ready to get out of here pronto, which is true. And, they're headed to the other side of the island so they can head off, what was it, southeast, northeast, whatever it was, so they can head off in that direction as soon as everything is ready. And we see, Lilith is the one piloting it. We see Frankie and Bonnie and Luffy probably on the ship, and Luffy and Bonnie are still eating because they're Luffy and Bonnie, and all of that. And then we, of course, see that Kizaru has gotten past Punk Records, and he is listing off, so the power station, Punk Records, and York are the thing I need to protect, okay? And he's just like, too bad Sentamaru couldn't have been on that list as well. And, but he's just like, Vegapunk, Dr. Vegapunk's elimination is our top priority. And then we still cut back to within the Labosphere again, where, Vegapunk is with the other Straw Hats and Stussy and Kaku and Lucci. We'll get to that in a second. Hi. And it's just, Kizaru has infiltrated the dome, and they're just like, oh, no, that's not good. And, it's like the Luffy and the others are still moving the ship, and they're on the right back here, so that's going to take a little bit and everything like that, even though the Vega Force one probably can move rather quickly. Also, we get, like, slightly better size comparisons between Atlas and Vegapunk and Edison, so we get some size comparisons there in the background, and we see the rest of the Straw Hats are just like flipping out, and everyone's just like, well, unless we can get the barrier down, all of this is pointless to move the ship and everything. And we see Stussy sent something. We see Hattori just kind of fly, Lucci move, and Lucci tries to attack Vegapunk. Stussy jumps in front of it, and she takes the finger pistol that was aimed directly for Vegapunk. So she saved Vegapunk and has definitely been hurt. So now Vegapunk has now lost has now watched two of the people that he very much cares about, considering he does very much care about Stussy, considering that he is, for all intents and purposes, her father figure, given everything, the fact that she was cloned in Mads and everything, and he was, part of that, the leader of that. So she's hurt. We see that. We see Sanji grab the bubble pistol that, releases the sea prism bubbles. Did you knock your toy on the floor? Silly girl. There you go. Pretty puppy. Pet the girl. Pet the pretty girl. Pretty girl. And so, and for the title chapter, if I have this of, oh no, it's the giraffe in the bubble. He grabs the bubble gun, aims it at Kaku, traps Kaku in one of the sea prism stone bubbles. I mean, they were able to hold the Seraphim, so I'm quite certain they're going to be able to hold Kaku as well. Although I don't know what would be able to pop them. I would assume eventually they would either wear down or they would pop or something like that. But Kaku's trapped and everything. And I don't know if he knew about the bubble gun necessarily, or if he did, he didn't know that it was going to be pointed at him. But I'm not surprised that it was. And he's just like, seems your friend left you out of the loop. And then we see that Lucci probably tried to attack Vegapunk again. Zoro jumped in the way that time, and he's using his swords to defend against Lucci, and Lucci's leg appears to be covered in armament hockey at this point in time. And Zoro's like, oh, looks like you now have intense backups coming. You're now growing a spine. And again, Lucci is just like, we're all as good as dead. You're all as good as dead now that Kizaru and I are working together. So again, this does appear to be that Lucci, it's the whole, we'll work with you for now. Okay, now I'm going to betray you setup that was set up with, Luffy and Lucci, several chapters ago and everything when they made that bargain. And of course, Lucci was the one that was sending information via probably some tiny little snail, possibly hiding in Hattori's hat, is my thought of where the tiny snail was that was sending information to the vice admirals and everything that were with Jay Garcia. That were there. So we have that. And so now Lucci and Zoro are fighting, and they jump out of one of the walls or whatever. So they're fighting, and just, don't underestimate us and everything. And then we see Kizaru is there, and he is watching as the Vega Force One is carrying the ship away. And he's just like, I wonder where I was wondering where their ship got when it wasn't on the shore. So again, yeah, Vega Force One is one that carried it up there. And he's watching, and we hear it's either Lilith or Frankie, probably Frankie. They sent a vice admiral. They sent an admiral after us. Oh no, that's not good. That's not good. Luffy, wait, where did Luffy go? So probably Frankie in that regard. I guess it could be Bonnie. I don't think it would be Lilith, but most likely Frankie. And we see Kizaru and we see Luffy. And we see Luffy going, long time no see. Or it's either Kizaru or Luffy that goes, long time no see. And then Luffy just up and kicks Kizaru. We see the, hockey lightning coming off of Luffy, just banging into Kizaru. Now, bear in mind, Kizaru probably took some damage from his fight with Sentomaru, but probably not a huge amount. But he probably took some damage. Now he's dealing with Luffy. And even though Luffy probably, the night before he had to deal with, S-Bear and S-Hawk and whatever other stuff happened there, last night on Egghead, Luffy is probably still pretty close to full, plus he's had a good meal. So Luffy's probably pretty close to full health anyway. So he attacks Kizaru, and, and Kizaru's like, I see that you're cheeky as ever. And Luffy just goes, yeah, we're 100 times stronger than we were 2 years ago, Kizaru. So, again, this is callbacks to what happened on Sabaody a lot of the time. Several things in this arc are callbacks to Sabaody, of course. But, it's Luffy is now fighting Kizaru, and instead of like last time on Sabaody or even at Marineford when Luffy didn't really stand a chance against any of the admirals, Luffy now stands a very good chance against Kizaru. And Luffy hasn't gone into any of his gears at this point in time against Kizaru yet. We know that he went into gear 5th against Lucci very briefly, and he didn't really sustain any damage from his fight with Lucci as far as we could tell, or if he did, it's healed by now. So Luffy didn't go into any of his gears just now when he attacked Kizaru. So, I mean, Luffy also has his just regular haki and his Conqueror's haki and his observation haki with his future sight. And then, of course, he has his advanced armament haki and his Ryuo technique and his, armament haki, coding when he's using his Conqueror's haki. And then he has all of his different gears that he can use on top of all of those things that he can use against Kizaru. So Luffy has a much bigger arsenal in his bag than he did the last time that he had to deal with Kizaru, or either of the last few times he had to deal with Kizaru. Admittedly, their interaction on at Marineford was very brief, but it did happen since Luffy did face down all 3 admirals there very briefly. So we have that. Luffy doesn't look like he activated any of his gears, just probably using his Ryuo haki and, just haki in general in order to be able to cause, block Kizaru's attack, or at the very least land an attack on Kizaru at the moment. Also, I kind of just want to see Luffy try to do something with, like, Gear 5th fighting Kizaru, or, like, Kizaru tries to go into one of his light forms, and Luffy just makes his hands huge, and then just, like, traps Kizaru inside of them. That would be kind of funny. But I was trying to think of, like, what else Luffy could do. I mean, we know that Luffy can, in his Gear 5th form, he would be able to, he can manipulate the environment around him, because, we saw that very recently in the episodes, but also in the manga where he can, turn the ground rubbery and everything like that, and, like, stretch the ground and stuff like that. So technically one of the things Luffy could do is if he has, the objects around him, if Luffy had glass or if he had mirrors around him, preferably mirrors, he could be able to use those to, like, bend the mirrors enough with his powers, with his Gear 5th powers, to, like, trap Kizaru inside of something like that. Now, the question is whether or not Luffy is, knows enough about physics in order to try to attempt that. I know that he dealt with Brule a little bit on Whole Cake, but that wasn't really something that he had to deal with Brule in that regard. And it was more Nami and then Chopper and Carrot that had to deal with Brule more than anything. But that would be an interesting combo there. But also, if Frankie or one of the Vegapunks mentioned it, then Luffy could try it. If one of them pointed it out to Luffy or told him this plan, then they could do that. That would be an interesting way of, like, trapping Kizaru. And maybe not necessarily like completely taking him out of the game, but at the very least nullifying him for a short period of time while the Straw Hats worked on getting the barrier down and worked on getting everything else ready so that way they could escape. Also, at this point in time, we now have Stussy is injured, and Luffy is now off fighting, or Zoro is now fighting Lucci, which is, I don't think, a matchup we've seen before, so that'll be interesting there. Kaku is now a giraffe trapped in a bubble, which is just funny. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. He's kind of hostage at the moment. Chopper is still with the group, so he would be able to treat Stussy while Vegapunk works on taking care of other stuff. Also, I mean, we've seen Luffy and the others take finger pistols from Lucci, and they were not necessarily fine right away, but like Stussy is also a member of CP9. She has a mask. She has a mask. She is a very high-ranking member of CPI 0. So her being able to, at the very least, withstand taking a finger pistol from Lucci wouldn't surprise me. She's probably at the very least injured, and she's probably going to feel it, and she'll probably end up with a scar. But at the very least, she may be able to at least still help with other things that are going on right now if she gets treated by Chopper. She may be able to still go and help fight against Lucci, or she may act as a deterrent again against something else that makes its way onto the island. Based on what else is going on, so we can see what's going on there. Also, it was like Kaku gets trapped in a bubble. Kaku's just not having a fun time right now in this arc. First he gets bitten by Stussy and turned into a giraffe drink. Then he probably has to fight like 2 Seraphim at the same time. Then he ends up getting trapped in a bubble. So things haven't been going well for Kaku. Unfortunately. And I like Kaku. I mean, I like Lucci too as a villain and everything like that, but I like Kaku as well. But I'm sorry, Kaku. I'm really sorry. Pet the puppy. But I don't really know what else they could do at the moment. I mean, yeah, they could trap Kizaru if they have like enough mirrors or something like that Luffy could use. Like if one of the Vegapunks or Frankie or something tells Luffy about that concept, and Luffy could try it. Or something else where he could try to like trap Kizaru. Or, if they get a bubble, I mean, Luffy couldn't necessarily do anything with the bubble himself, but if, Nami or Sanji runs out with like the bubble gun and uses the bubble gun on Kizaru, they could trap Kizaru that way and do something like that, like what they just did with Kaku, and that would be a very similar thing. But again, we don't know how much those bubbles can withstand, and if any of the Seraphim get out of the bubbles at some point in time, and they don't have anyone to like counteract orders given to them by York, then they're not going to be a very helpful thing to have running around the island. So that bubble gun, I have a feeling, is going to end up being very important down the line. More important than it's already been. Then again, I can also very much picture it just getting like destroyed at some point in time very easily, and then they just have to get more of them. Because they clearly have multiple of them, because like Lilith had one, Nami had a little smaller one that Sanji just used, and we'll see what else happens there. But I don't know what'll happen next. I know that I think next week is another break. Also, this week is, live action One Piece, so I'm very excited about that. As I said, my mom and I are going to watch several of the episodes together. So we'll see how it goes. Because she knows what One Piece is. She hears me talk about it. She's, heard me record or edit these videos, so she knows some of what's going on. So we'll see how that goes. If she, how much she likes what happens in the series and the live action series, and we'll see. I'm excited about it too, and I'm really hoping it goes well. Also, I love all the different things where it's like Oda meeting Inaki and, all this other stuff that's going on, and all these different promotional images that are like, fun bits from like the new crew, the cast crew that are doing a great job. And like Oda watching different things like that of like different groups reacting to like the series and everything, and hopefully very much liking their reactions. So we'll see how all of that goes for the live action stuff. This is, of course, the end of the review for chapter 1091. Next week is break. We'll see what happens after that. And, you know, Brenda says goodbye and thank you for watching, and so do I, and I hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Bye.